I'm SC Romero with my guy from the DGens, who's also an honorable member of the Devy Planet, Tom Harvey. Spencer is out today, and today we are talking about the truth of the transfer portal. What does it mean? It seems all glorious and stuff when people get this NIL money, but is that really good? We're going to talk about some players that enter the transfer portal. Is it a good decision or a bad decision? We'll talk about all that after the intro.
Before the world knows the names, welcome to the Devy Planet. The Devy Planet. The Devy Planet.
Devy Planet, how's it going? I'm SC Romero again, alongside my guy from the DGens, but also the member of the Devy Planet, Tom Harvey. How you doing today, Tom?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. Super Bowl Sunday. If my dogs go a little crazy, don't mind them. They're just running around the house a little bit.
They're excited for the Bad Bunny concert at halftime.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, man. I mean, Super Bowl Sunday, a lot of things have been off. We took a good hiatus. We've been working on a Devy guide that we'll talk about a little bit later. Some big things happening that we'll talk about in the Devy Planet as well. But a lot of stuff happened while we took off. We kind of ended our season right before the bowl season started, right? Because a lot of people ended up not sitting out of their bowl games. Yeah, playoffs happened. So it was just kind of a lot of chaotic things going around. And a big part of that is the 2026 transfer portal kind of took off this year. The year before was massive, and this year just kind of stepped on that as well. Before we get into some big names that transferred, what are your thoughts? As I mentioned, it's the truth about the transfer portal. What are your thoughts about the transfer portal? Is it good that college football is kind of transitioning to this, or do we need some restrictions going on with this?
I think there needs to be some restrictions to it. Just flat out free agency every year is probably a bad thing for the sport. But the thing is, you're not going to be able to regulate that until they go to some type of CBA, and they're not going to be able to go to some type of CBA until they're labeled as employees of the university. Right. So until they take that step, this is what we got.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big things happening. A lot of people, you might have agents in your ear now talking about, oh, you need to make this move simply because your day 3 talked about draft picks. You're not going to be making this money, but here you have this university that's willing to pay you, millions of dollars and everything, right? So there's a lot of different things that could be moving around, or maybe just someone just didn't have that great year, as we'll talk about some of these guys, and they need to really show out to improve that draft stock as well. So a lot of different things that happen. The NIL is kind of making a big name for that too, right? Because as you mentioned, you have to be an employee of the university. Right now, these college kids are not, but yet they're still getting paid by the outside sources that are helping with this NIL, this name, image, and likeness, as you will. So a lot of big things happen. A lot of things. I like the idea, right? Because that's something that I feel some college players needed. You need to get some kind of pay with the amount of work they put in, right? They're not able to get jobs because they had to practice all the time. Then they're going to school, stuff like that. But something has to happen. But I think they kind of went all in rather than kind of say, well, what's the bad, right? They didn't really think about that. I felt like what's worst case scenario or things happening like that. So there's some big things happening. But let's get into some of these guys because some big names happen. First, we're going to talk about a guy that started out at Tulane in the G5, moved up to the ACC, right, to go to Duke, and had a great season there, but now he's transferring over to Miami, and that's going to be quarterback Darian Mensah. Talk to us about your thoughts on him transferring to Miami. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, see, this was part of the thing I was talking about, just the all-out free agency. He was only at Duke for a season, but he apparently had signed a multi-year type of contract with them to where Duke was trying to sue him to get him to either have to pay back something or stay. They ended up settling, so now he's able to move on to Miami. I personally think the move for him individually is good. Right. Miami is obviously a step up over Duke, even though Duke won the ACC. Just the program stigma.
That was a whole ACC. Yeah. That was a whole crazy thing too.
Yeah, I mean, the whole tiebreaker situation there.
Right.
But I think for him personally, it's a good move to go to Miami. I mean, he's gonna probably improve his draft stock, right? I
Right.
mean, you look at this probably as almost the same thing as Cam Ward moving from Washington State to Miami.
For sure.
Cam Ward was a lot more toolsy,
Right.
but Mensah, still has he's still a talented quarterback.
Right.
And I think that this could drastically improve his stock, probably from a late round quarterback to mid round quarterback.
Right.
You may be looking at him getting drafted around the same time that like Carson Beck's going to get drafted this year.
For sure. I mean, and I'll challenge that to say I think he had a great season last year. It went under the radar because it was at Duke. If he goes and replicates that season or improves that season, because he is bringing his wide receiver in Cooper Barkate right to Duke, who's his top wide receiver at Duke, or to Miami, excuse me. He also has freshman feet on Malachi Toney there, right? Mark Fletcher's coming back. You have some guys on defense. Mario Cristobal's doing great things there. So if he replicates or improves it, we may be talking about him as a potential first round, I think, if they go in there and do it. Now, it's going to be big shoes to fill because Miami went to the national championship. So that's going to be, if they don't replicate that, does that push him back? Potentially. But we also know that Cam Ward didn't go to the national championship, but he had a hell of a season. And guess what? He was the overall pick. Now, granted, the draft class, we know about that draft class, who's in there and stuff like that. So I don't think he's going to be number one overall. But there's possibility where if he replicates that same season at Duke, at Miami, that he sneaks into the later end of the first, potentially. I do like Darian Mensah, as you mentioned. I think this was a great move for him. But as you also mentioned, that fine tuning, like signing that contract and then jumping ship the year after. Like if guys are getting this NIL money, it seems like Duke, who I think it was estimated 8 to 10 million, maybe something like that he got from Duke. If you're signing that big a contract, like there has to be. You can't be doing this within the parameters of 2 years at least at this system, right? Some you can argue, hey, after a year you have a buyout or whatever it is, maybe I don't know, or you're not guaranteed all of it. They kind of have to have like a guarantee because there's also some guys that they're doing handshakes and the coaches are like, yeah, we're gonna pay you X amount of dollars, and then they don't see anything. Who was it at UNLV, Jordan Blake last year as well? That
Matthew Sluka.
Yeah, and ended up sitting out after 2 games or so. Is I'm not playing anymore. So there's on both sides, not just the college kids side, but also on the coaches and the program side. That there has to be something to say, hey, if we're gonna give you this money, you have to sign this contract saying you're gonna be here for X amount of seasons as well. There was in the clause in that Darian Mensah one. They found the loop around it. Now he's at Miami. Now he has an opportunity to go out there and shine and truthfully, outright win the ACC, not this whole tiebreaker stuff, right? And Miami go and do it. So it's kind of awkward that, Duke kicked Miami out and now he's like, well, I'm just going to go there and win it for Miami then. But, there's a lot of big things. But let's go on to our next quarterback here. This is going to be a big one because at once upon a time, this guy was the QB1 of his class when we were doing, freshman scouts and stuff like that. He was a tough guy, strong arm, smart quarterback. A lot of people say, well, he's trying to be like a Patrick Mahomes, the way he's looking and stuff like that. But that's Dylan Raiola from Nebraska going to Oregon. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think it's a good spot for him to go and learn behind Dante Moore. I think he's kind of taken a step back as far as being a prospect.
Right.
I do still think he has Devy value, but he was considered a high-end quarterback prospect whenever he went to Nebraska.
Right.
Had a couple kind of mediocre seasons. Now he's moving on to basically to do the Dante Moore thing, where he transferred to Oregon, sat behind Dylan Gabriel, and now he's the guy. Right. Now Dylan Raiola is doing the same thing, going to Oregon, going to sit behind Dante Moore, and then he's going to become the guy. I think there is a deeper issue with Raiola. I think it's I don't know if it's a commitment thing or if it's he's not just never happy where he's at type of thing. But I mean, he went to 4 high schools in 4 years. He committed to 3 different schools. And now he spent 2 years at Nebraska, and he's already leaving again.
Right.
I think there's a deeper issue there with him.
Mhm.
I think he's going to have to it's kind of hard to prove your way past that, right?
Right. For sure.
I think he's just going to have to basically go in there and show his talent is more immense than what his personal issue is.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, Raiola, as you mentioned, doing the Dante Moore thing. So this automatically takes Raiola out of the 2027 class, right? So now he's going into the 2028 class. So you're looking at Underwood, Keelan Russell, as some top names there that could be potentially, leading that class. But it could be well, because I think Dante Moore did it for a reason of kind of lost encouragement from the coach at UCLA and going there said, all right, I'm going to sit behind Gabriel. Now I'm going to take the reins. And now he's doing it again, right? So we may even see Raiola come out in 2029 as a draft class, right? But there is upside for it. As you mentioned, commitment might be an issue, but we know the system that Lanning runs. Granted, Will Stein's no longer the offensive coordinator there, right? So there's going to be some new changes there, but that could really benefit Raiola because Dante Moore is a smart quarterback that he could adjust. But the OC now could be like, okay, well, maybe I need to plan for the future. How is this going to affect Raiola in the future as well? So sitting behind, taking that back burner in a sense and learning from a quarterback like Dante Moore, who had first-round draft buzz this year, but decided to stay back and go and compete for a national championship at Oregon. We know Oregon's a different kind of atmosphere when you go to Autzen compared to Nebraska. So maybe this is the limelight that he was wanting. He wanted this kind of energy to be around. And we know Oregon, is boots on the ground when it comes to recruiting as well, getting 5-star athletes left and right. It's going to be interesting, because you think about it, we have Dante Moore with, Evan Stewart, who's, coming back right from an injury. Then we have DeCorey Moore, who's a top freshman there. Well, now you have Raiola, DeCorey Moore, and Jalen Lott, 2 5-star prospects as well. So as far as the 2027 season, when that time comes, potentially if Raiola stays, I think this was a move where it's like, do I want to start or do I want to go to a program that can help me develop into an NFL quarterback? Right. And, I'm not the one saying it, as you know, I'm an Oregon fan, but there's been the QBU, right? You have Bo Nix there. You have, Dylan Gabriel there. You have Justin Herbert, guys that have came out and have found some success. Gabriel got hurt this year, but have found some success in the NFL. So maybe Raiola saw that. It's like, all right, I need to be the next guy there after Moore, right? So there's some opportunity there for him. I doubt we're going to see anything from him outside of an injury from Dante Moore, but I think this is really a learning one. And plus, he dealt with some injuries too. He has some shoulder injuries and stuff. So this is something where he could, take a full season off, kind of heal and really understand the game better, kind of slow it down at the college level and say, okay, I know I have the attributes, the technical abilities, the tangibles to be a good quarterback, but now I need to kind of put it all in the mixing bowl and mix it all together to be that top end quarterback as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, what that 2027 class looks, or 2028, 2028 class looks like. But Raiola may be one of those top names, especially if he ends up staying at Oregon another year as well. Our next guy here, though, this is a quarterback too. We talked about Mensah and now this one and more as well. But now this quarterback, he could have came out this year, which I think looking at how the class is, it might have been really good if he did. But this is Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati going to Texas Tech. I know this was one of your guys. What are your thoughts on him actually staying and not going into the draft?
I think it's you look at the amount of money he got. He's probably making more money going to Texas Tech than what he would have going in the second or third round of the NFL draft. So right. From a financial standpoint, great move.
Right.
Going to pretty much a ready-made college football playoff team with Texas Tech, especially now that they're bringing in big-time wide receivers like Malcolm Simmons and Kenny Johnson. Right. To go along with their three-headed monster at running back with Quentin Joyner coming back and Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams. I think Brendan Sorsby to me has that kind of Josh Allen type of play style. Big arm, mobile. He's not really gonna be really elusive, but he doesn't mind to run over you.
Right, for sure.
So to me, he has first round tools.
Right.
I think going to Texas Tech is going to allow him to show that.
Yeah, we know last year, Texas Tech really when the NIL came out, they really took that on full reins and said, all right, we need to go spend some money. I was listening to an interview from one of their coaches talking about when that came about. I really called all the boosters and said, look, this is kind of the Wild West right now. And if we want to win, we need to start spending money. And they were able to gain some money and grab some top athletes, right? And this is another big part of it, again, Sorsby, right? They were a big team in the playoffs where a lot of people said, hey, they could be the one that upsets, teams like Oregon to go in there and win. They have a strong defense. The quarterback play was good. The offense was good. But now we have an opportunity. We have Sorsby, who had a really good season at Cincinnati as well. But now he averages brings in a different layer. As you mentioned, that mobility comes in, something that was kind of missing, that duality at the quarterback position. He's going to bring that into Texas Tech. So this could be the missing piece they needed. Also, he's, at this point, a veteran quarterback in the college game. So he's smart. He understands what college football is. This is something they needed to be that leader, that vocal spot at the helm for their offense. And now you have an opportunity to say, hey, we missed out on the playoffs this past year, or not miss out. They went into the playoffs. We missed out on the national championship. Let's go ahead and let's go get it now as well. As you mentioned, he was probably pushing, day 2, round 2, round 3 kind of pick. So staying, getting the money from Texas Tech is going to be better financially. Now let's see if it works out for the draft stop, because if it pushes him back, all right, we still got the money from the NIL, but yet you still have to, go in there and do different things. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But I'm excited. I know Texas Tech, what we were talking about, was a huge landing spot for us as far as quarterbacks. Ended up being Sorsby. We were thinking, maybe Lagway may go there, or you could talk about maybe even Raiola at that point in time. But, Sorsby's the guy, and this is going to be something interesting for them. And they're probably going to be a competing team in the Big 12 as well. But speaking of the Big 12, North Texas really just, I'm going to say this war is not the proper wording, I guess, but really just invaded Oklahoma State. As North Texas, their coach went over to Oklahoma State and he said, all right, well, I'm going to bring my guys. Let's talk about how they're invading and taking over Oklahoma State with Drew Mestemaker, Caleb Hawkins, and Wyatt. You had the three-headed monster for the offense of North Texas. Now the three-headed monster at Oklahoma State. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Morris did a great job of bringing those guys over. They were pretty much a package deal from the start. As soon as Eric Morris took that job, I was just thinking they're all three going to go. Right. But Mestemaker really turned. I mean, Mestemaker's story is just incredible. Was never a starting quarterback until even through high school up until this past season, and then all of a sudden just really blew up. He was a redshirt freshman. Now he'll be draft eligible for 2027. And he could potentially work his way into being a top 3 or 4 guy. And bringing in Caleb Hawkins, really, really good running back. He'll be a true sophomore. And Wyatt Young, his number 1 receiver. Oklahoma State, if those guys can prove that they can take that jump up in competition, which, for the most part, the Big 12 doesn't play a whole lot of defense anyways. I think, yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma State could really contend here.
I agree. Well, just looking. So we did a 4-round mock. We'll talk about this here in just a second. But Drew Mestemaker for Devy mock, as I might say. Drew Mestemaker was QB7 off that board. So I mean, I just want to bring that up because you mentioned potential first-round pick. He is getting a lot of buzz in the Devy realm right now because of what he did at North Texas. Granted, it's not a P4. Now he's in a P4 Oklahoma State. So, again, just like a Mensah kind of situation, if he replicates or continues to improve on that, his draft stock is easily going up because could he go down? Sure. You go in the Big 12, sometimes they have some good, solid front sevens in their defense, right? But at the same time, the Big 12 isn't necessarily always known for their secondary. So now this kind of leaves open opportunity for Drew Mestemaker. Wyatt Young could potentially move into day 2. Caleb Hawkins get a lot of buzz as a top running back as well in the nation. So this is a great opportunity for him because, again, you're moving with your coach. So your coach already believes in you. It's not going to a new system, so to say. Obviously a new program, but not necessarily a new system. Your coach believes in you. He brought you over. Not only did he bring you over, he brought the guy that's behind you in the backfield, and he also brought you your top wide receiver from North Texas. Granted, there's be other playmakers at Oklahoma State for him. They have a stronger defense now as well. So this is something that could really benefit him. And this was one of those moves that I feel was the right move. It was, not let's say just moving up to move up. Obviously, if you do get a chance to move up from a G5 to a Power 4, go ahead and do it if you feel you're ready, right? We talked about Ahmad Hardy last year coming from, drawing the blank, Lafayette, right? To go in there, or no, Monroe, University
Monroe,
of Lafayette, Monroe. Go into, to Missouri, you did great things, right? But then we talk about Makhi Hughes, who we'll talk about a little later, didn't do great things, right? So it could be wishy-washy, but this coach specifically brought you in because he already knows what you can bring to the game. He already knows the type of quarterback you are, the arm talent you have, what you're able to do, what you're not able to do. This is going to be a great move for Mestemaker, and I think it's an awesome opportunity for him to get this in front of him as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was the nation's leader in passing. So, I mean, as a redshirt freshman, you put him in in the American Athletic Conference was probably the best G5 conference. So, going to the Big 12 isn't a massive step like jumping into the Big 10 or the SEC. Right. The thing I worry about with Oklahoma State is, does their defense translate? Yeah. Or else if that defense isn't any good, then you're looking at another Baylor situation from this past season, where you had all the weapons on offense and nothing defensively, to where now you're not competitive.
Right. Well, with Baylor, for example, excuse me, you had I'm trying, not Bryson Washington, Sawyer Robinson, right? Had great things, but this is an opportunity where the defense was horrible. Unfortunately, Sawyer Robinson wasn't able to do enough to get those wins, right? So that's a big part too. Is if the defense isn't good at Oklahoma State, can Drew Mestemaker do enough to still win those games, right? And sometimes you can't. Sometimes your defense is laying up, three and outs and not making that happen. They're scoring on the first play of the drive or whatever it is on the offense, and defense isn't really holding their own. Makes it harder. But Mestemaker is able to do enough to get those wins or put his team into winning situations that doesn't matter what the defense does. That could be a whole different scenario as well. But speaking of new things happening, big things happening at Ole Miss. First, they lose Lane Kiffin. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Lane Kiffin going to LSU. But then, Trinidad Chambliss is trying to get another year of eligibility, and he ends up not getting that. So now he's going into the draft. Ole Miss kind of as a whole went from being at an all-time high to potentially a low or mid of the pack now. But let's talk about Lane Kiffin, since we're talking about the transfer portal and what he's doing at LSU, because I feel Lane Kiffin really went in there and got some good names. Not to say the names he got some veterans, some smart players, but I think there could have been better. But it's Lane Kiffin, and he's done some great things. What are your thoughts on some guys that he got at LSU?
Man, I think the 4 or 5 guys he got at wide receiver are really going to help turn that offense around. Honestly, we all thought Nussmeier was kind of banged up last season, didn't play well because of that. But I didn't like their wide receiving core either. Yeah. I didn't think Barry and Brown was overly talented. Nick Anderson was always hurt. Mm-hmm. Aaron Anderson a little bit on the smaller side. But now, now you bring in guys like, quarterback like Sam Leavitt, obviously is going to have to prove his foot's healthy. Right. But then you also bring in Husan Longstreet for the, kind of playing the long game there.
Right.
As the future of the program.
Right.
Wide receiver wise, Jayce Brown out of Kansas State, Trey Wilson out of Florida, Jackson Harris, who was Hawaii's best receiver last year, Winston Watkins coming in from Ole Miss, who was a big time receiver for them. I think, to go along with guys like Harlan Berry and Caden Durham in the backfield there,
right,
that offense is really going to take off under Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I want to point out Jayce Brown at Kansas State because our guy Spencer, at Buckwild Sports, make sure you're following him. That was a big guy that he turned me on to, is because he's a phenomenal athlete. And this is, I'm saying this, don't get confused. I'm not doing the comp. I'm not saying he's the comp. But this is going to be potentially Sam Leavitt's Jordan Tyson at LSU, because he is a guy that can go out there. He has solid route runners, solid hands. And I said it all the time at Arizona State. Sam Leavitt was good because Jordan Tyson was on the field. When Jordan Tyson is not on the field, Sam Leavitt wasn't looking as great. But when he's targeted Tyson, a solid wide receiver like that, it makes him look better. Now, I don't think Jayce Brown's going to move up into a top 5 Devy or draft pick, anything like that, like a top wide receiver in the draft. I think he has day 2 capital written all over him. But at the same time, I think he's moving from a good wide receiver, a great wide receiver, George Tyson, to a fairly good B plus wide receiver in Jayce Brown as well. So this is a great opportunity for him to do it. You mentioned Trey Wilson, so it's been banged up, but we also know he has some speed. You mentioned Jackson Harris, a guy that is reliable, that understands what he needs to do and where he needs to be, that he did that at Hawaii. Winston Watkins coming in from Lane Kiffin out Ole Miss to say, okay, I'm going to transfer back over to you. He knows what he has in him. But Leavitt's interesting to me compared to, I feel there was maybe some missed opportunity. Like, I don't know if Leavitt was his first choice, if I want to say that. Why go after Leavitt after he had an injury, right? He's a veteran quarterback. He knows the game. I get it. But I'm curious, did he target a Sorsby? Did he target a Raiola? I don't think it was the first choice, but you make the best of what you got.
Yeah, he initially targeted Sorsby. Then, that whole Damon Williams thing with Washington. Yeah. He went after Damon Williams. That was a school who went after him that caused Damon Williams to try to enter the portal.
Right.
But you're kind of saying Jayce Brown may be his Jordan Tyson. I think Trey Wilson's going to be that guy for him. I think Jayce Brown's more of the downfield stretcher. I think he's a Deshaun Jackson type of player. Sure. I think Eugene Wilson is going to be his main his main target, like Jordan Tyson was.
And I just want to point out, you said the Deshaun Jackson type. I mean, that was something they were missing last year, was that field stretcher to really get down the field. Nick Anderson was a guy, but you and I said it before the season even started. He has been healthy, and that's a big part. You're the guy for saying, the best ability is durability, and Nick Anderson wasn't that. And Anderson's great, but again, smaller side, he's eating you up in the middle of the field, so that could be something they need. So then the question would be, is Leavitt the guy that can push the ball there? I think Longstreet can. Can Leavitt be the guy that pushes it down? Because I think he's better in the short and intermediate, getting those bullets out and everything. He does have an arm to get it, but he's going to be able to do that consistently. Now, I will say it's not in the transfer portal because they were already there, but I am super stoked to see what Harlon Barrett and Caden Durham do. I think this is going to be phenomenal for him. We've seen what Lane Kiffin does with solid running backs. He does have a workhorse, so right now I'm leading more Harlon Barrett than I am Caden Durham. But we also know Caden Durham has ability to be a pass catching back. So this could be something where he runs some tricks for that third down pass catching back to move the change as well. That could be something really big for them.
Yeah, I think that backfield situation looks a lot like the Lions backfield situation where you got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I think that is Harlon Barrett and Caden Durham. Harlon Barrett, I think has a lot of that Jahmyr Gibbs in him. Yeah. And Caden Durham runs a lot like David Montgomery, maybe with a little bit more speed. Yeah. So I mean, I like the dynamic of their backfield. I also like these weapons that they're bringing in at wide receiver.
Right.
I think this offense
should be better.
I think it's potentially the best offense in the SEC.
Okay. Where the last stuff's happened, but yeah, it could be with the names you have on paper. It does look like it. Mm-hmm. I will say, because we're on the topic of transfer portal, Caden Durham did enter the transfer portal. He ended up withdrawing that and stayed at LSU. So that is something to monitor, because does that, and that's kind of why I'm kind of like, all right, Harlon Barrett is the guy, because Caden Durham was on the way out. But something happened. Maybe he wasn't getting the looks he wanted, or maybe Lane Kiffin said, hey, we have a role for you, whatever it may be. Something happened that brought him back, and he said, all right, I'm going to take my name out of the transfer portal. But that is something to know about, because that could be a big reason why we might not see it early on in the season, and why we might see more of Harlon Barrett as well. Speaking of running backs, though, a big one that this one kind of shocked me, and I'll let you speak on it, because I feel he injured his foot at the end of the season. That already kind of scared me off from drafting him if he was to declare this year. But he ends up entering the transfer portal after having a pretty good season, over just under 900 yards in 8 games. Phenomenal season for Justin Haynes at Michigan. And he ends up saying, all right, I'm not going to declare. I'm going to go into the transfer portal. He goes to Georgia Tech, which is a good running program. But talk to us about Justin Haynes here.
Yeah, this has kind of a couple of different things written on it here. A, Georgia Tech offered him a ton of money. And then B, Justice Haynes, foot may not have been ready for the pre-draft stuff. So, I mean, that could have cost him draft capital. And so he, just decided to come back. To me, he would have been RB2 of this draft.
Yeah.
If it came out. Now he jumps to overall RB1 in Devy for me now.
Okay.
To me, next season, he's probably the best running back going into the draft.
Yeah.
Especially now that he, being at Michigan, he was going to be part of a tandem with Jordan Marshall.
Right.
Jordan Marshall proved he was fully capable. Now going to Georgia Tech, I know that they got Hosley there, but Justice Haynes is, he's going to be the guy. For a program that is a run first program.
Right.
You're looking at a guy who's going to get 20 plus touches a game, I think.
Right. Yeah, this is going to be a great opportunity for him if he's healthy. I do agree with you on the foot situation because when it happened and when he was shut down, I started thinking about Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon at the beginning of the season injured his foot. There was rumor he was going to come back, and then it just became rumor. He never came back for the season. And I started thinking, what if this was a similar situation for Justice Haynes? We don't get as much detail at the college level on the injuries. We just hear the body part that's injured, not necessarily the full details of what it is. But I started thinking maybe it was that type of injury where, like you mentioned, he wasn't going to be ready for the NFL draft, for the combine, for pro day, for the draft, maybe not even for OTAs, and thus is a team going to take a shot on him. What could have been a early day 2 pick now becomes a late day 3 pick because yes, he had a great season, but if you're not ready, do we want to take that risk when we could get guys that are ready that could go in there and play with us in practice? So big opportunity for him to come out and do some big things, I think, but he definitely needs to go out there and shine. Georgia Tech's a great program for the running game, as you mentioned, and Justin Haynes showed exactly what we saw when we were looking at him at a high school level, that speed and that explosiveness. He showed that at Michigan. Hopefully that foot injury wasn't significant enough to show any kind of slowing down for him as well. So it'll be interesting to see what he does at Georgia Tech. But hindsight, looking at it now, okay, maybe it was a great move for him to say, all right, I'm going to stay in and transfer. But at the same time, we'll see. Michigan, top kind of programming outside of their having some controversies with their coaching and stuff that happened there. But going to Georgia Tech, we're going to see, numbers speak. And if he goes out there and produces, it's going to be great for him there. Before we move on, though, I do want to say, make sure you're following us on our Substack. Go ahead and subscribe to our Substack there. I am going to drop the link for y'all at the bottom. So make sure you click on that, subscribe to the Substack. That's going to be where we get all our written content going on. Right now, we're just doing some mock drafts. We have some information on the transfer portal as well in there. You're going to see a lot of the written stuff we're not going to be doing on the shows, kind of stuff we just do behind the scenes, what we're doing by ourselves. You're going to be seeing that in the Substack. It's a great opportunity there for you to get some of our Devy rankings, to get some of our matchups, and things of that nature, to go in there and really talk about what we're not saying on the shows for you. So if you like reading rather than listening, by all means, go subscribe to the Substacks. Again, we're going to drop the link for you at the bottom there in the description. So make sure you're doing that as well. Also, we're going to talk about another running back, though, because this was a big-time name as well going in when he was at Baylor. Smaller back, but has some bulkiness, can run through some guys. This could be Bryson Washington going over to Auburn. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Auburn's going to have to run the ball. So, they lost all their wide receivers and really didn't bring in a whole lot of wide receiver. So, they brought in a couple South Florida guys, but they lost their top 4 or 5 wide receivers from last year's team. So bringing in Byrum Brown, at quarterback, and then, pairing him with a Bryson Washington when they already have Jeremiah Cobb coming back also, that running game is going to have to really be clicking in order for them to have any type of chance of winning games in the SEC.
Right.
And Bryson Washington, is a proven running back. Was a little banged up this past season, but, his redshirt freshman year, he was really, really good. I think he had over 1,100 yards, something like that, his redshirt freshman year. took a little bit of step back this past season, just it's because of the some nicks and bruises and a little bit of injury concerns there. But I think kind of moving into that Alex Golish offense, kind of that faster paced. I think you're really going to see Washington and Jeremiah Cobb both kind of take off.
Yeah, and with Byrum Brown, as you mentioned, a guy that kind of just has that physicality at the quarterback position that could go and run through it as well. You might see a lot of options happening here as well, where you don't know, is it going to be a run by Brown or run by Cobb or run by Washington, right? So this could be something for him. You're moving in from a Big 12 to the SEC. That's going to be big news for Bryson Washington. If he goes out there and has even a mediocre, he doesn't necessarily replicate what he did last year, but just go out there and show that he has the capability of running through some SEC defenders. That's going to be big for him as well. So this could definitely raise his draft stock. I do like this move for him, especially as you mentioned Baylor with their defense and how they played. When the record doesn't show winning, you don't necessarily look at them as much, regardless of what they're doing. He can have 800, 900 yards. You're still not paying too enough attention because you're like, well, they're not winning, so I don't know if I necessarily want this, right? So Auburn, same situation. Their defense isn't necessarily great, but you're in the SEC now. Eyes are going to be on you for sure, so that's going to be a big one. But as you mentioned, Auburn lost a lot of their wide receivers. We talked about one earlier, but now let's talk about the big name here because Texas is actually getting some big names here. We're going to talk about the wide receiver, but let's talk about Hollywood Smothers because he was a guy that was rising some draft boards, also got banged up, and now he's ended up transferring over to Texas from NC State. What are your thoughts on Hollywood Smothers going there?
I think this backfield is going to be extremely dynamic. They're not going to lose a beat at all. They bring in Hollywood Smothers, but then they also brought in Raleek Brown out of Arizona State, who was their leading running back. So now, you have Smothers and Brown, who are pretty similar backs. You're not going to lose a beat once you replace one with the other.
Yeah.
So they're both very capable of making you miss. They're both very capable of being pass catchers. Raleek Brown is a former wide receiver himself. Kind of reminds me of who was Antonio Gibson.
Okay, yeah, nice.
Kind of in that type of mold where he's basically a former wide receiver who is converted to a running back who's going to be able to run routes for you. Right. Can also take it in between the tackles. Hollywood Smothers, a lot of the same way.
Right.
I look at both of them as kind of being kind of what Tony Pollard and Antonio Gibson were back in the day for Memphis.
Okay, nice. Like it.
I kind of like that. Kind of like that kind of dynamic there. Then you bring in the big fish. Arch Manning was looking for that. Go-to wide receiver one. He got him. Cam Coleman headed over to Texas. Man,
yes,
that is a big time get. Texas is potentially the number one team in the country preseason.
Yep.
And Cam Coleman is just what the doctor ordered for Arch Manning.
Yeah.
He didn't have a great start to the season last year. Arch didn't. Towards the back half of the season, though, he started really clicking to where, we had kind of dropped him down the rankings.
Right.
Late in the season, we moved him right back up just because, he worked through the adversity. He showed exactly what he could do. Very mobile quarterback, big arm, and was getting multiple guys involved. Now a lot of those guys have kind of moved out. Parker Livingston and DeAndre Moore, and those guys moving out. But you bring in Cam Coleman to pair him with a Ryan Wingo. Emmett Mosley still there.
Lock it.
I think sky's the limit for this Texas team. And bringing it back what they're bringing back on defense, they may be the preseason number one team in the country.
Did Livingstone go to Oklahoma State? Is that right?
No. Where did he go? I can look that up real quick. Hold on a second. Arkansas, maybe.
Maybe I thought it was Oklahoma State. Could be wrong though. But speaking on Texas, as Ohio State is
Oklahoma.
It's Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. They're the same. Not really, but you know what I mean. But speaking of Texas, Ohio State, It was a strong team. I'm not saying they're not. You mentioned preseason #1 team. Ohio State lost a heavy piece in their program in drawing a blank, Brian Hartline, right,
Mhm.
as their OC. That was a big part in the whole recruiting thing for Ohio State these past few years, getting this first round prospect. We do believe Jeremiah Smith is a first round prospect. Besides that, we like Chris Henry Jr. as a first round prospect, but we don't know. We don't know what the development's going to be like after Hartline left, right? I'm saying this because you mentioned Texas being the preseason team one. As Ohio State lost a big piece, Texas gained a big piece, as you mentioned in Camp Coleman, but also in these running backs in Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown. Because last year you saw Trey Weiser have some big plays; he had some explosive plays. You saw CJ Baxter have some big things happening. They did, but it wasn't the juice they needed in the running game. Hollywood Smothers was explosive for NC State. Raleek Brown was explosive for Arizona State. They have that juice to be explosive in the backfield. As you mentioned, the go-to wide receiver one that Arch was kind of missing. We saw it develop as the season progressed, as you mentioned, as we moved them out, then moved them back. Him and Ryan Wigo started to click, and we're like, okay, this is what should have been happening the first 5 weeks. It took a little bit for y'all to gain this chemistry and make it happen. So now you're getting a bona fide wide receiver alpha in there. Arguably, Devy wide receiver two. Some could have different takes on it, but you have Jeremiah Smith, and now you have Kim Coleman, who was at Auburn, and we were saying he was the wide receiver too. And this was with a Jackson Arnold there that we were like, okay, maybe we're not even looking at the quarterback. We know Cam Coleman's him, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what the quarterback. Now you're getting this quarterback situation where it's like, Cam Coleman, go out there and show that you're him now. There's no excuses at this point. But this is going to be interesting because we know Ryan Wigo is also someone that he's not separated from his defenders, but he could bring it down. We know him and Arch have chemistry. So now you're going to have a situation where these defenses are going to have to say, okay, do we double team Cam Coleman and make sure we can do whatever we can to stop him? Does that leave open opportunity for Ryan Wingo potentially, Emmett Mosley potentially, Khalid Lockett potentially? Or if not, can we even focus on them? Because now we have to worry about these two running backs that are so explosive, so dynamic, as you mentioned, that can both pass catch out the backfield as well. We don't have enough people on defense to gain pressure on Arch Manning to make sure the running backs are secured within the box and not going outside or gain big plays in the open field, or to gain the secondary for these wide receivers that some can gain separation, some had the speed to beat over the secondary, and some just had the physical capabilities to man or mosh, if you will, over these defenders at this level in the SEC. So Texas took this evolution, if you will, to say, okay, we were strong last year, but in a sense, we weren't competitive. Now we're strong and competitive. Now we have different layers of the field all secured, where from our backfield to the back half of the secondary, you can't stop us. We have someone for every part of the field now to go out there and compete to make it happen. Now it's on top of Arch to go out there and make that play. Will he be able to? Time will tell. But we do know he is a smart quarterback. We do know he's a quarterback that can hit every layer of the field. We do know he's someone that can hit those tight windows. We also know he's a mobile quarterback. Multiple times he went out there and made some big plays. So I didn't even talk about that because his mobility is also something to watch out for these defenses. Now you have two running backs that are explosive, can run and gain, 90 yards on a dime. But you also have Arch Manning who gains 70 yards on the dime if he needs to escape that pressure. So Texas this offseason did some phenomenal things. In my eyes, you mentioned LSU on paper. I mean, I think Texas really hit it on the money. Their defense took some hit. They lost some guys on defense, but they still have Colin Simmons there on the edge, who is going to be a leading pass rusher this next year as well, potentially a top 5 draft pick next year. So you have some guys coming in, and now this is going to be some big moves for Texas, and this may be the national championship Texas team that we thought we could get with Arch Manning.
Yeah, I mean this Texas offense is going to rival what LSU's offense can potentially do. Lane Kiffin is known for having those big explosive offenses. He
Right.
brings that to LSU. Steve Sarkisian is known for having big explosive offenses. So I mean, both of those guys have all the weapons that they need. I
Right.
think to go along with LSU. I think Texas is right there with them as far as offensively.
For sure. That's gonna be a big one. It's gonna be exciting to see that. One that we'll hit on just real quickly, just because he had a down year, but I do want to say that I think this was a great move for him. Makhi Hughes ended up going to Oregon from Tulane. Didn't do really good. Kind of redshirted. Was ended up being like RB5 on the roster. Now he's at Houston. I do like this move for him. I do think it's a great move for him because this is a second chance for him to go out there and do it. Any thoughts on Makhi Hughes here?
Yeah, I'd like to see him bounce back. I don't quite know what the issue was there at Oregon. He wasn't picking up the offense very well, I guess.
Yeah.
But when he was at Tulane, he was one of the best running backs in the country.
Right.
All of a sudden he goes to Oregon, takes that step up in competition, and then can't see the field to the point where he's like, okay, I'm just going to redshirt now and move on.
Yeah.
He goes back down to a smaller situation, but still a Power 4 program with Houston and inside the Big 12. I think potentially, him and Connor Wigman and Amari Thomas there. I think Houston can be kind of that top half of the Big 12.
Get to a good bowl game.
Yeah, and get to a pretty decent bowl game. I don't think they're going to compete for a playoff spot.
No.
But I think they're probably in that top 5 or 6 range as far as the Big 12.
Right, for sure. And I will say with Hughes, going there, I do like the fact that it seems both parties, as in Hughes' side and Oregon's side, was communicative to say, look, it's not happening. So he was waiting, and he said, okay, well, I'm just going to rest her. Cool. Go do. It wasn't. You have some players where sometimes they wait, and then something happens where it's like, well, we can't redshirt this because whatever it is, NCAA rules, stuff like that. So it was good that you saw some communication there, and early on they said, you know what, I'm just going to end up redshirting here then, right? Instead of kind of having them think, oh, well, we have a role for you.
Well, and it also still leaves with 2 years of eligibility left.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just his career's not ruined.
Right.
Whereas last season, going into the season last year, he was probably a top 5, top 6 running back in Devy.
Right. I had him at 1 before the season started.
He's completely fallen off that board right now just because of the situation last year. We'll see if he can bounce back. There's still going to be lingering questions though.
Right.
So he's really going to have to prove himself as far as pre-draft workouts and all that stuff moving forward after he leaves Houston.
Right.
But if he can go down there and have a solid another 2 years,
right,
all of a sudden he could potentially be back in that top 15, top 20 Devy running back type of range.
Yeah, he'll be. I'm not sure his age. He definitely, obviously, will be older, but he still that's a power back as well. So even if he got to the draft, I don't think he could be a workhorse, but either way, he's going to be more of your goal line fit anyways. So it's not like he has to go out there and try to get that first round capital. The team will take a shot on him and say, hey, you'll be someone that we give it to at the goal line. You're just going to pound it through as well. So let's go on to our next guy here, though. Talk about some guys, going from Auburn. Eric Singleton going to Florida. That's going to be a big one as they're getting a new quarterback as well. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the move to Florida is going to be pretty good for him. We saw last season that Auburn quarterback situation was pretty terrible.
For sure.
I've said that Cam Coleman and even Nick Marsh over Michigan State they were the 2 receivers that did the most with nothing at quarterback.
Right.
You can kind of lump somebody like Eric Singleton in that type of situation with Cam Coleman also, just because their quarterbacks were terrible. Jackson Harris and Ashton Daniels were not good. They should have been playing Deuce Knight more than what they did. They didn't.
He's gone.
Yeah, now he's gone. Florida brings in, Florida loses Trey Harris, but they're bringing back Dallas Wilson, who's hopefully going to be healthy, right?
Right.
They pair Dallas Wilson with Eric Singleton Jr. now. They bring in Aaron Philo, who's following his offense coordinator from Georgia Tech down to Florida. So there's familiarity there. And Aaron Philo is the all-time leading passer in Georgia high school history. So, there's something there.
Right.
Where we'll see if the wide receivers click with him. With Singleton and Dallas Wilson. If they do, the Florida offense can be dynamic with Jaden Ball in the backfield.
Yeah. Shout out my guy Mike, the Dynasty Dogs. Make sure you're following him and his show as well. Dynasty Dogs, the Dynasty Dog Mike. He's a true guy. I was out there at the Senior Bowl actually. Well, of his guys, before he said he was, entering the transfer portal, was Eric Singleton. He really started to fall in love with him. So he saw some good movement in him, some good agility, some good evasion from defenders on him as well. I do for me, I want to see more from Singleton. Is it going to be from Florida potentially? Because I do think he's a great compliment to a Dallas Wilson. As you know, in the games we saw, we were ecstatic. I mean, he's one of our top 5 wide receivers in Devy. We're ecstatic to see what Dallas Wilson healthy is going to do. Hopefully it's not an Evan Stewart trajectory and injuries playing his career kind of, but Eric Singleton becomes this great match for a Dallas Wilson. You bring in a Philo. We know Jaden Ball is a powerful runner. I absolutely love Jaden Ball as a running back this year as well, because I think it's going to be something, as you mentioned, bringing in Summerall from Tulane. He's going to be what he had in Makhi Hughes, right? I think this is going to be exact replica. Now we're going to see this is the next step for Jaden Ball. So the passing game may take a step back because of the coaching staff they have now, but I do think it's going to take a step back, but in a sense, take a step back to really showcase what these wide receivers could do. It's not going to be all the numbers aren't going to be there, but I think we're going to see some great plays from them to say, wow, these are wide receivers that can make some big things happen.
I think this Florida wide receiver room is drastically improved, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Dallas Wilson, if he's healthy, is a high-end wide receiver one.
Right.
Then you bring in Eric Singleton Jr. You already got Vernell Brown, the third there. Davion Gross coming in from high school. I think there is a lot of upside for this Florida wide receiver room.
Yeah. And with Vernell Brown, I know he's slipping on some reins as far as Devy. Like, I don't think he went in our first 4 either. But he's someone that I think we saw the explosive. We just see the consistency. And that's going to be something we need to see for him this year, because we saw big plays happen. He had the, Odell Beckham catch, if you will. But we need to see consistency. We need to see it every week in, week out kind of deal. But Florida's going to be interesting after a bad year last year. As we know, DJ Lagway, who was our Devy QB1 before the season, didn't have a great season. We'll talk about him a little later. But it's going to be something new. Florida needed this. They needed some revamp in the offense, and I think they got it with their coaching staff and with these guys that they're bringing in Philo and Singleton here. Let's talk about national champions, though. Fernando Mendoza, before we get into the transfer portal, Fernando Mendoza is the QB1 of the class. I think that's by default. He won national championship, won the Heisman there. In Superflex drafts, where are you taking Fernando Mendoza?
Rookie drafts?
Yeah.
Probably in that 7 to 8 range.
Okay. Fair. So there's a lot of wide receivers. There's some, good tight end, and also, you have running back as well that are good there. And I want to bring that up because Indiana became this system, and no one's talking about this system enough, because Curtis Rourke, the year before Fernando Mendoza went out there, had a good season. It was a Fernando Mendoza Heisman season, but I said this.
He was also playing with an ACL.
Yeah, and I've said this in different shows that Indiana had a better defense this past year that wasn't talked about enough. Their defense was stellar. From top to bottom, they were adding pressure. They were getting interceptions. They were making turnovers, 3 and outs. Their defense put Mendoza in good field position to allow him to be this top person here. Okay, so now let's go into what we're going to talk about here for them. They're getting a new quarterback because Mendoza going to the draft. Well, who would have known? You won a national championship. You won a Heisman. You're a first overall pick. He's going to the draft. Now they're bringing in a guy from TCU in Josh Hoover. But on top of that, they're bringing in someone that we've talked about plenty of before in Nick Marsh from Michigan State, going over to Indiana. As we talked about Cam Coleman earlier, Nick Marsh is someone that we've kind of said, hey, if he was at Michigan State, a lot more people were talking about him. Guess what? By the end of the season, people are talking about him. Now the world's going to end up talking about him. What are your thoughts on this Indiana move for Hoover and Marsh?
Yeah, let's talk about Josh Hoover real quick. I think he has a better arm than what Mendoza has. I think he makes more mistakes, so he's going to have to limit the turnovers. But as far as his arm talent, I think he has better arm talent than what Fernando Mendoza has.
Right.
I think the move from TCU to Indiana to play under Curt Cignetti, very, very smart. We've seen what the last two quarterbacks for Indiana have done. The move for Curtis Rourke from Ohio to Indiana, major step up, but played really, really well.
Yep.
Took them to the college football playoff.
Yep.
Fernando Mendoza comes in from Cal, wins the Heisman, going to be the first overall draft pick.
Right.
This Josh Hoover move, very smart move for him.
Right.
Then you go to Nick Marsh. I said it a few minutes ago. Him and Cam Coleman did the most with the least.
Right.
As far as wide receivers, because neither one of them played with quarterbacks.
Right.
Aiden Childs was not good. He got replaced. Then the backup there was not good. Nick Marsh did all he could do there. Now you put him in a situation, he is a much better version of Elijah Surratt.
Oh yeah.
Elijah, he's
much
fast. He's so much faster. He's a better route runner. He's a better high point guy. So I think Indiana has upgraded their wide receivers. In this instance with Nick Marsh. They're obviously losing Omar Cooper Jr., who is one of my favorite wide receivers in this upcoming draft.
Mm-hmm.
I love Omar Cooper Jr. I think he is fantastic. But not only are they bringing in Marsh, but they're also bringing in Shaz Preston from Tulane, who is a big-time wide receiver for them. They're bringing back Charlie Becker, who proved to be as reliable as anybody out there.
Right.
I think this wide receiver core looks better now than what it did last season when they won the national championship.
Yeah, I think this offense looks better now than it did.
Not only that, but they're also bringing in Turbo Richard from Boston College, who I think is on par with like a Roman Hemby.
Yeah, 100%.
Lee Beebe's coming back. I mean, they may take. I mean, I don't think they're going to have 2,000-yard rushers the way they did it again this past season. But I think overall, this offense is probably more dynamic.
I think Mendoza had some big plays. I'm not saying he didn't, but I would say this again: the defense won the championship. Go watch the season. Tell me the defense didn't win these games. Mendoza put them, in some winning situations, but the defense won this national championship for them. This defense was stout. It was exactly what you want in a national champion type of defense. They made big plays happen. They added pressure to these quarterbacks. Beck looked confused on the final play of the game. I don't even know why Beck threw the way he threw. We'll talk about that later at a different time. But the defense won a lot. Now, Mendoza's good. He obviously won the Heisman.
A point to their defense. If you played in CFF leagues where you had to play a defense, Indiana had the number one defense in CFF.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not trying to take away from Mendoza. He's QB1 by default. Okay. I want to put these numbers here though. Mendoza 6'5", Josh Hoover's 6'2". Mendoza 230 or so, Josh Hoover's 200 pounds. Last year, Mendoza was, in terms of yardage, was QB 15. You know where Josh Hoover was? Take a guess.
I haven't dove into what his numbers were, so I couldn't even imagine. I'd probably say QB 12-ish.
You're close. Mendoza's 15, Hoover was 16. Okay, so they're right there by each other. So Mendoza had 3,535 yards, right, as QB 15. Josh Hoover had 3,472. Josh Hoover had 65.9% completion. Mendoza had 72% completion. But Josh Hoover threw 34 more times than Mendoza, and he only completed one less pass than Mendoza. So Mendoza completed 273 of his passing attempts. Hoover completed 272 of his passing attempts. Hoover had 29 touchdowns. Mendoza had 41. Mendoza had 6 interceptions. As you mentioned, Hoover makes more mistakes, 13 interceptions. So that's the tell that tells there. And I'm saying that because Hoover's not a bad quarterback. And he's going, again, Indiana is a system. We see certain programs that once they get this coach in place, an Oregon, right, an Ohio State, right? You could even say with Miami right now, Mario Cristobal. Once they get a certain head coach in the state or in place, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, you start to have this program become a system. Indiana became this system with Kirk Hignetti, Curtis Work, Mendoza. Now we're going to see Josh Hoover. And I guarantee you, people aren't going to be talking about Josh Hoover as they should be going to Indiana because they're going to be like, he's not Mendoza. Mendoza's 6'5". He's a smart quarterback. He's doing this, and that. He's,
He's a robot.
committed. Right. He's doing this. That's great. You have the photo memory, right? You're doing it. You remember everything.
Fernando Mendoza is what like ChatGPT would create as a prototypical quarterback.
Right. And just because you're prototypical doesn't mean you're the right fit. I think Hoover has a lot more to prove, obviously, but I do think he's going into a system. You're bringing in a big time wide receiver, a big time. As I mentioned, this is DK 2.0 and Nick Morris to your system. They didn't have anyone like him. I feel like last year, like a Nick Morris. As you mentioned, he's a better version of Elijah Surratt. I agree, but they didn't have anyone. Before we did it this season, I said, guess what? Nick Morris is gonna jump up to wide receiver 3 of this 2027 class and jump over Ryan Williams. Guess what? Ryan Williams took a dip. Nick Morris moved up, and this is gonna be a big opportunity. Hoover didn't have anyone like this at TCU either. The running game, the defense, this is going to be a big opportunity for Hoover. Does he become the best quarterback or a top 10? Maybe not. But I do think this is a great opportunity for him, and we're going to see some good things happen for Josh Hoover this year out there as well. I'm excited for Nick Morris because this is what you and I have been talking about over and over. This is something that we need to hear from him as well, to go in there and do it, to say, all right, Nick Morris, we've been on your side. Now go show the nation that you're on this side as well.
Yeah.
Before we get to our next guy, who's another big-time wide receiver, I do want to talk about something we have in the works. This is a reason why we took off a few months here. We've been going on. We're doing a Devy guide, so that's going to be coming out here. We're hoping by April that we get it all done for y'all. But it's going to be happening where we have our rankings on there. As you mentioned, this could be something that we're going to be putting through Substack as well, and we'll make sure everyone has opportunity to see it as well. But we're going to be having our top 25 quarterbacks, top 25 running backs, top 25 wide receivers, and overall we're going to be having tons of Devy players on there that you can talk about or read about, but that's going to be something that we've been working on. Tommy's been putting in a lot of work for it. I appreciate the work you've been doing, Tommy, and what you do as far as rankings and how you're talking about these guys, their strengths, their weaknesses. It's going to be something that we feel there's going to be tons of players. Our top guys are the ones we will focus on, but we're also going to have freshman favorites, right? We're going to be diving into those guys and some of those quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs that you need to be watching as far as freshmen as well. Anything you want to talk about on the Devy guide?
Yeah, with this Devy guide, we're going to have basically what we're doing is we're going to be listing strengths and weaknesses of the top 25 at each position. Then we're also going to be giving you more guys to be looking at for each position. I mean, I think I probably got 75 plus guys at each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, that you're able to kind of that we're going to be listing as guys you need to monitor, guys you need to watch, important players, guys that you may be thinking about taking in your Devy drafts. To go along with, like I said, strengths and weaknesses, and then kind of player comps. And then we'll have, and then for those top 25 guys, we'll even have some more information for you, a couple paragraphs to read on each of those guys. And then I even have rankings for, the top 10 guys in each conference, the top 25 guys at each position, the top, I even have the top 25 guys from G5 in there, I believe. So we'll be, there's going to be a ton of information in there for you to go through. I think as of right now, I've got about 60 plus pages in there, for you guys to look at. So once we get all that taken care of, hoping to have it out within the next month or so, we'll have all those things ready for you. And then we'll let you know how you can access it.
Right. It's going to be a lot of big things, and I want to hit on the deepness of it because people may be asking, well, my draft's only 3 rounds. Why do I need, 70 plus quarterbacks. Well, in Devy, we're in the deeper league where we have 15 rounds of 12 guys. So if you're doing the math, that's 100. I'm doing the math off the top here, so give me a second. 160 players that we're taking, right? Just with if we just took 15, it's 15 to 20, so you could take it more. So 160 players that were possibly taken there, 100, maybe up closer to 200. But it's gonna be something where it's just there, right? And these guys they have potential. Are these all first round picks? Definitely not. Are they all day 2 picks? No, but guess what? We still need to worry about the guys that are day 3 picks. We still need to worry about the guys that are undrafted free agents that get the opportunity to shine too, right? So there is going to be some guys in there that you're going to see the name and say, hey, I never heard this guy or I never even talked about him. Well, go watch the tape. That's what we're doing. That's why they're on these lists as well.
Well, it also gives you names to kind of keep in the back of your mind for future seasons.
Back of your pocket, yep.
Yeah. So I mean, even if your draft is only 4 or 5 rounds, we're giving you guys to kind of look forward to next year, 2 years from now, even 3 years from now.
Right.
And then we'll continue adding to it over the next several seasons. Also, you know, we're going to continue to evolve and keep adding more information for you.
For sure. Yeah, this is step one, but we have a lot more in the process of working on it. So we'll be excited to share that once it's all ready. Our last guy we want to really focus on here, though, is going to be a big time wide receiver that we both enjoyed at Ohio State. And as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the fallout of Brian Hartline, right? Because they lost 2 big guys. The one of them being Quincy Porter going to Notre Dame. Talk to us about this because I actually love this move. I think this is something Notre Dame needed, something Quincy Porter potentially needed. But what are your thoughts on him?
I think this move for Quincy Porter to go play with CJ Carr, almost lateral, almost. With Brian Hartline leaving, I don't know what the development at Ohio State is going to look like. That kind of has me worried about Chris Henry Jr. a little bit, even though his pedigree is through the roof.
I was really hoping Oregon was going to take him.
You know, but Quincy Porter to me is a top 10 Devy wide receiver, has all the talent, all the size, all the skill. Him moving from Ohio State to Notre Dame, again, to me, feels a little lateral just because, again, you don't know what you're getting developmental-wise at Ohio State anymore. Obviously, before, when Brian Hartline was there, Ohio State was the place to be for wide receivers.
And I don't think he would have transferred out.
Yeah, there was no question about that. Because he would have probably been wide receiver 2 coming into the season there with him.
Right.
And even Jeremiah Smith has said before, you know, after I'm gone, Hughes the next guy, you know, he's the next guy after me. Now he's going to Notre Dame, and I think he may actually end up being wide receiver 1 there this year. You know, you bring back obviously guys like Faison and Great House, and I know they brought in a couple other guys, but Quincy Porter to me has the most talent there. He's the best wide receiver in the room, and you know, the cream rises to the top, right?
For sure. Yeah, and I think you mentioned CJ Carr. He was QB 51 in terms of yardage, 2,714 last year. But I think this is opportunity for him. I know Drew Mestemaker took the nation by storm, but CJ Carr, I think, needs to be a more talks as well. I think Notre Dame, we kind of just take it away from it. Maybe it's the name of Carr. As a Texans fan, I don't really like that last name, but it's still somewhere where, you know, you can have, maybe you're a Raiders fan too. You're not a big fan of the name as well, but this is an opportunity for.
Not related, by the way.
No, I know you just see Carr though, is what you're saying. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. But CJ Carr had a great season, I thought. You know, I thought he really did something. I thought he really stepped up and helped move that Notre Dame offense when they needed to move as well. And now you're getting a big time playmaker in the Quincy Porter type of wide receiver, someone that can be a true alpha to a game as well, to go in there and do it. You're losing Jeremiah Love and Darian Price, so now you're gonna have a new running back taking over those reins, someone that wasn't in your top 2 RBs this past year. So you may need this evolution, this next step in the offense as far as passing game to come in, and I think Quincy Porter could really make that happen for CJ Carr as well. Yeah, so it'll be nice to see what they're doing there.
Yeah, especially when you don't know what the running back situation is going to look like. Obviously, you're bringing in 2 really good freshmen there. You also got Anais Williams, but again, you're losing Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So maybe they are kind of moving into that mode where they're going to have to throw the ball more.
Right. And again, CJ Carr didn't do horrible. Let me just pull it real quick so I just make sure I'm saying the right things here. Because at 51, he was what? Oh, 2007 41. I said 14. Sorry, I got that mixed up. But he also had 24 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So, he's smart quarterback making those plays. So we might see a little bit more on the touchdowns go up, a little more on the yardage, a little more on completion. And Roy just kind of elevate his game as well to have that dynamic or that big time wide receiver in Quincy Porter. Our last thing, as I mentioned, these are some guys that we just want to really hit on. Some other names to be aware of in the transfer portal here. The main guys we talked about were ones we really want to hit on, but some other ones here. Let's talk about Arizona State. As you mentioned, they lost some guys, right? They lost Leavitt. Tyson's going to the draft for Leavitt Brown. They really had to dive in and get a whole new big three, if you will, for them. And they did with a Cutter Boley. And now you also have Raiden Vance Wright, Omari Miller, Reed Harris. Talk to us about them.
Yeah, this wide receiver room looks deep now. Before they were really only Jordan Tyson. Now they're they got a big, huge target in Reed Harris, 6'5", 217 pounds. Omari and Miller he was a big time wide receiver for a bad Colorado team this past season. And Raiden Vines Bright, to me, he flashed tons of potential at Washington. You bring in a quarterback like Cutter Boley, who showed a ton of potential at Kentucky. That was at Kentucky. Now he's at Arizona State, where Kenny Dillingham has proven he can develop a quarterback. Showed that with Sam Leavitt. Cutter Boley, to me, he's a potential day 2 quarterback whenever he's draft eligible. You're talking, probably beginning of the 3rd round, late 2nd round type of guy there. I think he's mobile enough. He's, big frame, 6'5". He needs to put on some muscle mass. I think he's only right around 200, 205 right now. So, you're probably looking at a guy who probably needs to gain about 15 more pounds, but that's not impossible. But he's a good mover, big arm, smart quarterback. I think this offense, even though Raleek Brown is leaving, they're still bringing back Kyson Brown, who was hurt all season last year. Right. They did lose Kanye Udo, so really it's going to be Kyson Brown and then whoever else, kind of slotting in behind there in the backfield. But wide receiver wise, these guys have a great wide receiver room. Reed Harris, Amari Miller, Raiden Vines Bright. Remember those names.
I love Raiden. That's a big name for me. I was drafting him before I was going to watch the take, so I love that name. But on top of that, this is something they needed. They didn't have this type of diversity at the wide receiver room. They just had Jordan Tyson. Now they kind of have it, so now they have different options. So it's going to be big time for Cutter Boley there as well. I do want to talk about 2 quarterbacks here, because 2 that we were both big on. One obviously bigger than the other, DJ Lagway. He, as I mentioned before, last season he was our Devy QB1. Obviously not anymore, but he's going from Florida to Baylor. But also Deuce Knight, a guy that we both liked as well, big body, kind of a Cam Newton type of quarterback as well, going from Auburn to Ole Miss. Talk to us about these 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I can understand the reason why Lagway left Florida and why he went to Baylor. Even though Baylor's not the greatest as far as quarterback development. I think Sawyer Robertson probably got as much as he was ever going to get there. But I can understand the move there. It's closer to home, about 2.5 hours away from where he's from. Okay. Right. I understand. I don't necessarily like the fit there, just because I wish there was a more developmental type of situation for him. He needs that. But Deuce Knight, to me, especially with Trinidad Chambliss not getting that extra year of eligibility, I think Ole Miss is the perfect situation. It was obvious it wasn't going to work out at Auburn. They should have played him more last year. They didn't. Then they bring in Alex Golish, who was always going to bring in his own quarterback in Byrum Brown. Right. I think the move to Ole Miss, he is that next type of Cam Newton type of player. Right. Big guy, extremely mobile. His first play against was it Furman last year?
Yeah, 70 yards.
75 yards to the house.
Yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up for that all day. A guy who can run the ball, who obviously has a big arm. You bring in a couple wide receivers with Jonte Cook and Horacio Fields. He's familiar with Fields coming from Auburn. I think you're looking at, another situation that they kind of had this past season where, really balanced offense with Kewan Lacey, in the backfield. Then you bring in a couple pretty decent wide receivers.
Right. And, as you mentioned, they have Kewan Lacey there, so it's going to be big. I'm curious to see what it'll look like in the year, post Lane Kiffin, right? Because Lane Kiffin had a stellar 4 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, with Ole Miss there. With Lagway, I know you mentioned the development there. Is it possible, and I do agree, he needs some development, but is it possible maybe Lagway just needs to get back to the love of the game? Because before he went to Florida, we said this guy has it. This guy has the arm. He has the brains. He has the mindset. He has everything he wants, right? As far as going there, I talked about it when they were like, when did football or being in Florida become real to you? He was like, practice. I threw 3 interceptions. I went back and watched tape all the time. He has the mindset there. So for me, is it possible that he went to Baylor and said, man, I just need to go back to the love of the game, as you mentioned, closer to home, and really just go play the game I know? Maybe it's not for him, and obviously we do want to see development, but maybe it's not necessarily about the development. It's just about going back there and going back to your roots and saying, I'm going to go ahead and just play the game I love, and I'm just going to do it in a fun manner, right? And not necessarily development's where, but maybe that's what we need to see is that spark back, because it kind of looked like in his season at Florida towards the end there's like he lost that spark. It wasn't necessarily there. Like he had some big moments where it kind of just took everything out of him, right? And sometimes that's hard to bounce back from, getting out of that mindset of throwing the interceptions. We talk about quarterbacks needing that short-term memory. Maybe Lagway starts at that long-term or say, man, I'm just throwing pick after pick after pick. I mean, he threw what, 3 or 5 or against Texas, right? Some 6 maybe.
Now it wasn't against Texas. They won that game against Texas. But he did throw 5.
After.
Yeah, he did throw 5 interceptions in the game this year. Yeah.
So I mean, it just became that kind of that snowball effect where it just said, man, I'm not the quicksand. I'm struggling. I'm not getting out. Right. So maybe going to Baylor is like, all right, I could take a step back. I can come back and just show off my talent. What I showed at Willis High School in Texas, I'm gonna go there and do it in front of my family now and make it happen. So who knows? I think both quarterbacks have a lot of upside. Deuce Knight currently right now a little bit more because we saw some big plays happen for him where Lagway took some dips back. I do still like the talent in Lagway. Not moving up to QB1 again. I need to see it now, but I still do like the talent. I think Baylor was a potential good fit for him there as well. Before we talk about a few more guys, I do want to say we have our Dynasty Trade Calculator up. Make sure you're going in there. I think it's only $5 a month, $4.99 a month for you. Go over there, subscribe, or sign up for it. Why? Because this is where you're going to get your Devy values. This is where you're going to understand, hey, how do I adjust this? How do I get off of a Dallas Wilson if you're scared about the injuries? How do I go ahead and get off of DJ Lagway if you're worried about he's not going to develop into what you want? Guess what? How do I capitalize on a Cam Coleman going to Texas? Does this move him up in the needles for me that I can go out there and get a guy because my team on the NFL side is ready to compete? I'm just missing one piece, so I don't want to trade my NFL pros. I want to trade my Devy guys. The Dynasty Trade Calculator is there for you. You have your Devy rankings in there for it. Again, we have the Substack that we'll have our rankings. We'll have the Devy guy that we have our rankings. But Dynasty Trade Calculator is there for you right now. You can go in there and see some Devy rankings and get the best fit for you to understand how you can maneuver around your Devy leagues to trade these Devy assets for pro assets, for picks, whatever it is you need. That's why it's there for you as well. Now, last few guys here we want to talk about before we close it out here. We appreciate everyone being with us and after we took some time off here though, but a few guys I want to say, Austin Simmons, Caden Lee, both going to Missouri, leaving Ole Miss. This is just kind of follow with Lane Kiffin going elsewhere. Boo Perbola also left Missouri, so Austin Simmons kind of stepping in there to have some opportunity there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought it was kind of a weird situation there. Why would he go to Missouri when they already had Matt Zollers there, who I think was the future of that program? Austin Simmons going there was a little odd, but I guess I can understand it. He wasn't going to be the next guy there at Ole Miss anymore. Fine, okay. The Caden Lee thing I can kind of understand a little bit more, but if he'd have stayed at Ole Miss, he would have probably been in the running to be that wide receiver 1 there. He goes to Missouri, where I guess he could still, be the wide receiver 1 there, but I don't necessarily trust that offense as much as I would the Ole Miss offense. So I mean, I can understand why they went there. it's just kind of a, I wouldn't have done it if I was them. I'd have probably looked elsewhere.
Right. Fair. Speaking of, I don't know, I would have done it, but I mean, CJ Baxter going from Texas to Kentucky. I mean, that's a big one as well. Kentucky did get Will Stein. That's gonna be big for them, right? As their head coach there from Oregon. So maybe he saw that. CJ Baxter at this point, I know he was someone that you talked about as a top Devy running back. I mean, where is he at now for you, considering that he's now out of Texas going into another year and kind of had a banged up season with Texas too?
Yeah, man, the guy just can't stay healthy. Because of that, he's really fallen down the board. If he could ever prove he could stay healthy, he's talent wise, he's right up there. He's right up towards the top. Just he's just always hurt, can't stay on the field. So I mean, your availability is your best ability. That's what it's what I've always said here. And his availability isn't very good most of the time.
And Will Stein's known for having those type of running backs that can really be elusive in the backfield, but also some good pass catching. So maybe this is something where he can kind of ease in Baxter to just get some opportunities. So we'll see what happens there. Adam Muhammad, Ian Strong, Chase Hendricks, and Isaiah Horton, Alabama going to Texas A&M. Any thoughts on that, considering that they're losing Casey Concepcion and Mario Kramer is kind of an undersized, big threat, but undersized wide receiver. They get some bigger bodies here now.
Yeah. Muhammad and Strong and Hendricks headed to Cal. I think that's big time for JKS there.
My bad on that.
Yeah, I may have deleted that that note there, but they're headed to Cal. Adam Muhammad is going to take over for Kendrick Raphael there. He's since left, going down to SMU. So Muhammad left Washington, headed to Cal to be their kind of bell cow running back. Ian Strong, big time wide receiver at Rutgers, headed over there to be JKS's wide receiver 1. And Chase Hendricks, I think he was at Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. He was another kind of big time weapon there. He can head there and be that kind of complimentary wide receiver for JKS. Not only that, but they got a couple of pretty decent tight ends there. So I think this next season, his sophomore season, is really going to be JKS's launching point.
And this is something where JKS is moving up in ranks too. I think he was QB 3 or 4, taking off and reading our Devy mock. This could be big for him, but a good segue. I didn't even catch it. Kentucky. Cal also got, Oregon's defensive coordinator and Chaskupi there as their head coach there now. So JKS is getting something nice, and Loopy actually ended up staying up till like 3 a.m. and to fly over to Hawaii to congratulate JKS and say, hey, you're my guy here, going to his home state there. So very excited to see what's going to happen there. I think they have a good, strong team, and there's something to be watched out for. They're a team that doesn't get a lot talked about, but I think JKS may put them on the map there. Now he's getting some wide receivers and some running back help there as well. So this could be something very special for Cal that we needed, and something that's going to be developing. As I mentioned, Isaiah Horton, Texas State A&M, new wide receiver. I know our guy Spencer was a big Horton guy. Mario Kramer should still be the guy there with Marcel Reed. Horton is just going to add some dynamic, field stretching opportunity for them there.
Yeah, that's basically what Horton is. He's a field stretcher. I don't think he's a great route runner, but he gets good separation, has good speed, and gets downfield. Presents a big target, good 50-50 ball guy, contested catch. That's what Isaiah Horton's going to give. Going to give Marcel Reed, a big target to run downfield.
Right. And last two, we'll talk about these two guys here. Jamie French, Texas, going to Michigan. He was my freshman wide receiver 1. Didn't get the opportunity at Texas. Ended up going to Michigan. You brought up the idea that maybe he's the wide receiver 2 behind Andrew Mars. Bryce Underwood gets another weapon. I absolutely love Jamie French. Think he's very great in the open field. Think he can also be someone that can win downfield as well. And then Josiah Trader, JoJo Trader, Miami to North Carolina State. He's pairing up with CJ Bailey out there at North Carolina State. Big time quarterback who I know you love. Also gets a wide receiver that at one point was, one of the tops in his class, and now he's kind of fallen just because he didn't get that opportunity at Miami. So we have 2 wide receivers that, in my eyes, are both stellar wide receivers. Both wide receivers that at the point in time when they came into the college ranks, they were top of their class for me. Haven't gotten the opportunity, so now they're seeing something fresh. Any thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I actually like the JoJo Trader move from Miami to NC State. They lost Terrell Anderson, who has since moved on to USC. That was another transfer portal guy. I think he kind of steps in there, kind of really becomes that kind of go-to guy for CJ Bailey, who I believe is going to be a top 10 pick next year. I think CJ Bailey has it. And then Jamie French, like I said to you a couple of days ago, I think he becomes Michigan's wide receiver 2, gives Bryce Underwood another weapon there. Another guy, kind of the last guy I had mentioned here, Yannick Smith, another guy to watch out for. Goes from East Carolina to SMU, another big body wide receiver, 6'3", about 205 or so. I think this guy is going to have a lot of opportunity with Kevin Jennings to go along with Jalen Cooper there.
Yeah, Jay Cooper's a big time athlete that you need to watch out for as well. But yeah, I mean, I think all those guys, you know, in this sense, this is a transfer portal where you did it. There was no commitment or no reason for you to stay at the teams you were at. So go ahead and get out. You know, there are some guys where it's like, I don't understand why you had that commitment. You had the reason to stay, but you moved out. And the truth about the transfer portal, wrapping it all up, is it's not always greener on the other side. Sometimes you don't need to be chasing the money. You need to be talking about where you're at. And as much as I don't like to say he wasn't my top running back in the class, but Ashton Genty, his whole thing at Boise State was, I want to build my legacy here. I've been with Boise. I want to stay here. All right, man, go ahead and do it. We don't see that commitment a lot from a lot of these guys because money talks. And you're a 18, 20-year-old kid, and someone saying, hey, we have $5 million for you. Come play. All right, why not? You know, but there's some things that need to go along with that. These agents or whoever's in the area talking about it, you have some parents that are saying, go get the money. All right, sure. But at the same time, the longevity of it, is that money for one season going to be worth it if it doesn't match up to the NFL? Are you going to get the same development? You talk about DJ Lagway and the quarterback development. Are you going to get development to get you to that next level? Or are you going to take this money and go ahead and blow it because you're a 20-year-old in college, right? So there's a lot of things that could come along with it. The truth is, it's not greener on the other side. It's not necessarily always the best bet. Sometimes you just have to bet on yourself, stay at your program, and say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and do it and not worry about that money. Guess what? If you get to NFL, you get that second contract, that money's going to come to you. And that's really what it's about, right? The first contract's nice as the rookie, but you got to fight for that second contract. And that's where you got to go in there. And that's where the transfer and the trades comes in, saying, hey, I'm not going to stay with this team because they're not giving me what I need. I'm going to go ahead and enter free agency. And that's kind of where we're at now, is free agency in the college system is the transfer portal. You have a lot of players doing it. Any final thoughts on the transfer portal here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of other guys that we didn't even really mention who could potentially blow up. You know, I'm really interested to see what somebody like Cam Vaughn does at Miami. You know, move from West Virginia down that way. So kind of gives Miami another weapon to work with you know, for Darian Mensah. You know, then there's other kind of smaller moves that we didn't really go over, just because it was like, okay, I mean, again, you got guys from South Florida going to Auburn. How do they translate going into the SEC? You know, a couple guys who used to be in the SEC went down to South Florida, now coming back to the SEC.
Right.
There's just different guys there. So, I mean, go back through the transfer portal, look at each team, recognize who went where, and then kind of go and try to look and see how they're going to translate to that new spot that they're going to.
Right. Coaching, I mean, coaches too. Coaches are staying committed too, right? They get the opportunity. So, I mean, some are following coaches like, oh, I don't even need to know anything different. Some you have to say, hey, is this a whole new system for them, right? So,
well,
a lot of things to be happening.
You know, there's also a couple tight ends there. Andrew Olish moving from Penn State to Oregon. I think that was a really under the radar great move for Oregon. I mean, picking up a big time tight end like that, who may not be the guy this coming year, but long term future. I actually really like Andrew Olish going there. A couple other guys moving from smaller situations up to bigger ones, like Dorian. I think it's Dorian Armstrong, maybe. Going from New Mexico to Cal to pair with Minnie there at tight end. Again, gives JKS another weapon. Go look at these guys who are moving places and see how they fit in these new offenses.
there was over 1,500 players that entered the transfer pool. It might have been closer to 2,000. And that was, we're obviously not naming them all, but you have offensive linemen that go, defensive players that go as well. We didn't even touch any IDP guys, but tons of players moving around. So you have to be familiar with the name, not with the location at their end, because at any given time they can end up transfer. You still have some guys saying, hey, we're entering the transfer portal, even though it's closed, right? So you have some opportunities here where guys are moving left and right. That's what the best opportunity for them, as we do for y'all, and that's why we're here for y'all. Don't forget, we're going to plug our Substack at the bottom. We're going to plug in our X accounts. We're going to plug in our TikTok, our Dynasty Trade Calculator, everything that you can find for our rankings, everything that we're talking about. Devy, check out the description below. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Hopefully your team won for the Super Bowl. We recorded this, so we did it before the Super Bowl. We don't know who won, so if you're a Seahawks fan, go you, go Hawks. If you're a Patriots fan, I hope they don't win. If they did, it is what it is. But Devy Planet, we're taking time off. As we mentioned, we're probably going to do it about once a month here doing these shows as we're working on this Devy guide. That's our big project right now going in. So we appreciate everyone that's tuning in. Check out our Discord. That's where you can get all our Devy chats going on daily. And we'll see y'all next time. We appreciate everyone. Peace.
FFU. FFU.